I have been asked many times on the channel in comments and in emails if I would ever design adventures for people. And it's a great thought. And in a different world, in a different life, I would love to do that. But I don't have the time to do something like that unless it became my full time job. And as much as I love Geek Gamers, I don't think it's going to become a full time job. However, I did have this idea right now where for the holiday weekend, for what's going on in the world when people are spending a lot of time at home, that I could use something that I was just sent. And what I'm going to be using is this High Seas Pocketlands Geomorph cards and the Kingdom Pocketlands Geomorph cards that I was sent by the designer. These are available at pocketlands.com. That I could use these to generate an adventure for you in this manner. The cards represent geography. In this case that we're looking at here, these are the high seas. So we have cards that are from the deeps or the kelp sea or the shallows. I'm showing you the back of the cards, and they correspond to some of various types of terrain that you see out there and some that you don't. In the Kingdom card deck, which is the other card deck that I have here, there are more traditional terrain that you see not in the sea. So you would have in the kingdoms, you would have grasslands and swamps and mountains and hills. I'm going to be using the Kingdom cards to generate a story for you. The way it's going to work is the way these cards are designed to be used. Well, they could be used in many ways for GMs as just a way of randomly generating terrain and sending your players out on the terrain. You could also use them for yourself to start in a location. This is a location right here, and walk around. You could either walk around intentionally or you could walk around by rolling, and then use some of the very basic rules that I've put here in this binder, although they're not the only thing in this binder. They're not that extensive, to use some of the random tables that are included here to generate some encounters. And this is what I'm going to be doing for you. There are very light rules about using rations and having day and night happen. I'm not going to go into that here. I'll let you discover that on your own if you pick these up. I am, however, going to use the exploration rules, which state that as you come to the side of a card here, you can roll a dice. These are 5 by 5 cards. You can roll a d6 and based on that roll determine what the new terrain is going to be and how you walk off the card. So I will be doing that, and you notice here also that each card has a picture of a d6 on it, so you could use these yourself pulling through the deck instead of rolling a die if you want to do that. And also each card has a unique number, so you can remember where you've been. So if you give coordinates to the cards like 2, 2 or 3, 2 or whatever, and then on card 14 you can remember a specific area. Each of the rectangles represents a totally new area or a travel space. So we'll see how it goes. I'm going to just do this, and I will leave a few seconds blank in the video. If you want to actually have surprise, you could play the video alongside what you're doing. If not, you could listen to the video and then on that basis, if you chose to do it, if it works out, use that as the basis for an adventure. I'm not going to be doing it on the high seas. I just wanted to show you what the high seas look like. I'm going to start out with the Kingdom card deck and describe for you where you or your party begins. And I'm also going to be using the GM's Miscellany Wilderness Dressing from Raging Swan Press that is much more detailed. And based on this, I'm going to generate a bit of a story. I will be simply doing it on the fly. You can pause the video to play along if that's what you're going to do, or listen to the whole video and use that as inspiration for what you're going to do, or neither of those things. If this is a failed experiment, you can let me know that in the comments. But I thought it would be fun to try to do and see how it works. You begin in a watchtower that is surrounded by pretty new growth forest, so you can look around in all directions and see some low-lying hills off to the east with mountains in the distance, a fairly well-established pathway road down to the south, and off into the west, more of the forest, and then a bit of the unknown. You make a D4 decision about where to travel next, and you decide to travel up to the north through the early growth forest. And let's discover something about this forest here. We get an 87. The otherwise normal stand of trees actually forms a rune that a flying creature can clearly read. Anyone on the ground notices this only after careful scrutiny. So the question is, why didn't you notice it in the watchtower? Maybe it was slightly too far away. Maybe it was just out of eye line. But as you're traveling along, you are seeing that there is perhaps more here than meets the eye. Question is, perhaps, do you investigate? Do you not investigate? And let's give a little more information about this forest. 58 is going to yield. Yes, that was the crochet hook biting the dust. All right, 58. A grove of pine trees shelters a number of animals that would otherwise be natural enemies. They remain peaceful even if you approach. Well, you can decide what the enemies are depending on what you are doing here. It would seem to me that these animals being sheltered in the presence of this rune of trees, perhaps this is a magical spot. Maybe this is a magical glade area where the magic is so intense that it charms even the animals. Does it charm you? Does it not? That is a direction into which your story could go. In this case, we're going to continue along north after pondering those questions and continue moving into the forest area and seeing what comes next. And we move up here into some more hills, and then we do see a area of shallows in the distance here. There's a place called Fortune Forest beyond that we know of. We've heard of this place, but let's investigate these hills a little bit and see what they're like. All right, for the hills, we'll give this a roll, and on an 81, we find that we're finding that outcrops of the hills are suggestive of faces in this case. So clearly there is some larger presence at work here that can manipulate nature. It's manipulating the forest to create some kind of a rune, and that extends up into these hills. Is this, again, good magic, bad magic? Is this magic impacting you and your party? Does this magic have something to do with your mission or goal, or is it giving you a mission or a goal? These are questions that you might want to be asking. We'll make a random roll here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, to determine which way our party is going at this point. We're going to continue north. So we continue walking along now the edges of this water here. It's described really as a shallows, and we will see what, as we look off into the east, whether there is anything that we can learn about this water area. Actually, scratch that. We're gonna treat this as a coastal area. So we'll roll 87. I'm rolling a lot of 80s. 87 coastal area. We've got a swarm of seagulls that come and surround your party. Perhaps that's suggestive of some food or other presence of people around. Maybe this is an area that is going to be near some sort of population. Another 80. I gotta get better rolling. There are also some biting sandflies that descend. If you wish, you can be attacked by them or just try to avoid them. There's not much else going on here. We'll give it one more shot and see at a 7 whether there is any event here. We have a section of shoreline littered with shallow rock pools, and if you investigate, there's going to be a 10% chance per pool that you encounter a venomous blue-ringed octopus. If you wish to have that encounter, there it is for you. Moving along the coastline here, we're going to make another roll to see which direction we continue on, and we decide to go back around and enter into the Fortune Forest. We're still thinking perhaps about this magical entity that is here that may be controlling the area, or perhaps we've decided to just leave that be. Walking through the forest here, we're getting into a deeper forest, and as such, we roll a 9. We see that 3 raccoon kits tumble playfully with each other, crossing your path. You see no adult raccoons in the area, so this is so far a little happy place. And does this continue? All of a sudden, you see a nearby tree suddenly getting sucked into the ground. Investigation reveals a hole slightly larger than the now missing tree that travels farther down than you can see. So perhaps you will be investigating that and going down into that area. Perhaps it reveals a secret underground cave or lair that you can investigate and turn your story from an overland story into some type of dungeon crawl. If it is a dungeon crawl, perhaps it is a nature-based one, that the structures that you're in are all nature-based. Perhaps this is the site, or you will reveal the place where this magical entity that has controlled the forest and control the hills and control the animals, perhaps this is the site of where they live, and you can discover who they are, what they are, why they are doing this. That's one option. We, however, are going to continue on making note of that, and we're going to continue on at this point walking east through the forest, and we will draw another forest card to see what we get and what happens. Pulling in this card, we see, as we are exiting this area, we see the beginning of some kind of a road, and off in the distance we are going to encounter some type of a location if we choose to go in that area. There is clearly evidence of civilization here because we have a bridge built over this river, and the river is leading off perhaps into the sea area, the coastal area. It's hard to say. And if we continue traveling along this road and moving north, we will get to a location, and I think that's the direction we're going to go. You are walking along this road and seeing an old stone bridge built over this river, and off in the distance is some kind of location that's going to become your destination. You look more closely at this stone bridge and realize that underneath it there is a small cave entrance, and you are going to investigate that a little further. And you see along the cave entrance, you see some rough depictions of a hunting party fighting a massive winged creature that has reptile-like features, and this is decorating the cave entrance wall. You may or may not decide that's relevant. You may or may not decide to enter there, but in this case, we are continuing along the road, and as you walk along the road, you will see some rocks to either side of you, and as you're walking along that, you step on one of these rocks and you hear a muted hissing noise immediately coming from underneath it, perhaps suggesting that this road itself is built over some type of cave system. Perhaps this small cave entrance is actually an entry to a much larger cave system underneath this road. The hissing sound perhaps suggesting that there is some air and you're not actually on solid ground. You may decide to investigate that. In this moment, we are continuing along this road, entering more into grasslands area. There's some farmlands now that are evidence of the civilization that is in this location just beyond, and walking through these farmlands, you see some children running around, and they're not really interacting with you. These could be children of any sort. They could be orc children, they could be troll children, they could be humanoids. Whatever setting you are in, it will work. You see that there is a field of flowers off in the distance, and it looks somewhat magical. It's kind of glittering and somewhat alive in some way. And now you are going to be approaching this location, and the location itself is going to be a series, an informal grouping of very small structures, fortifications, castles. They're somewhat ruinous, but they are perhaps inhabited, and there is some organization to them, but clearly this is not a fully functioning society, at least at this moment. You see that one of them has an enormous dragon skeleton with wings outstretched as a roof over the porch of some old inn, tavern that you could possibly go into to determine whether. And so at this point now, being in this location here with the ruinous castles and the suggestion of the dragon skeleton built over an inn, you reflect back on what you've seen here, this entrance to the cave here that was built under the river with the carving of a winged reptilian animal, flying creature of some sort being hunted, perhaps. Maybe that is connected to this structure that you see in the town here. And then you reflect further back into the beginning of your adventure where you found the outcrops of the hills here that had faces carved into them. And then even earlier on at the very outset, when you were seeing the runes that were made, that the forest made into some that was made by some flying creature. Perhaps there's a dragon around that made this as a signal to other dragons. Something clearly was here that could only be seen from the air. These are some suggestions. These are many directions in which you could go. You could further investigate the town, and we'll give you a little bit more to do in the town here if you wish now to do that, or to pursue this line of thought, this theme that's developing with some type of magic in the area, some type of magic perhaps created by the flying creature, or perhaps it is a flying creature that is fighting the magic. We don't know. Those are all some directions in which to go. And let's just do a little more investigation of what could possibly be in this town aside from the tavern that we discovered. We could also discover off in the distance that there is a very elaborate palace of some sort, or in this case, I would say ruins of a palace up to the north. That is the suggestion of perhaps a entity that was ruling the area or controlling the area. Again, you'd have to filter this into the overall world that you are creating as to who or what that might be. And let's do just a little more investigation as we look north there. Oh, we see that the castle's gates stand open, and it does seem abandoned, but the key word here is seem. So you could continue north within this location to investigate that castle, and we will look around a little bit more to see what else might be in this location. Off to the east, you see some wood frame of an old abandoned barn area or storage area of something that there are the remnants of something stored there. It's a little difficult to tell what it is. You would need to investigate that further. If you went off to the east, you would be investigating that. And if you decided to go off to the west, you would be investigating a series of crumbling stone walls that are stretching out. It looks like they are denoting some type of property, lands. You see some rotted wood filling a hole between the walls, and it looks like that is the cellar or perhaps the dungeon of a no longer existing structure. So off to the west there is the potential for an investigation of a dungeon, and in fact, interestingly, now based on your card here, this is somewhat connecting perhaps back to this road and this structure underneath here of this cave. We recall that along the road there were rocks that indicated a hissing sound of air underneath them, potentially suggesting a much larger cave structure underneath there. Could it be a dragon's lair? Could it be the source of whatever magic was controlling this area here, if not that of the dragon? That is for you to decide. All right, well, I'm going to end there. I think that's given enough adventure starter, hopefully, for many different directions for this little story. Let me know in the comments if this was useful, if this is something you'd like to see again, either using these sets of cards or other things I might have at my disposal. And as always, thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.